Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today, my guest is Shantel Ochoa. She's back. She was with us a couple of weeks ago, and today she talks about conscious grieving. Shantel lost her son 12 years ago, and this is what started her dark night of the soul moment, her process of deep transformation. And she received during this time a lot of gifts, a lot of downloads, a lot of information. And she has a beautiful way of working through grief and teaching others how to consciously grieve and how to work through the grieving process. I love this podcast because Chantel is so open and shares from such a beautiful heart space. I really, really enjoyed this podcast. So if you do, please take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. And I'm going to hop on in with Chantel. I hope you'll enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hey, Chantel, welcome back to the Connected Community Podcast.
Hey, how are you doing? Thank you for having me today.
Yes, I'm excited to have you back. I feel like I've done a lot of courses with you. And then a couple of weeks ago, we released a podcast about archetypes, the victim, child, prostitute, and saboteur, and their effects on our relationships. So I want to encourage people, if they haven't heard that, to go back because it's a totally different topic and it's awesome. And I love that conversation. And you have so much wisdom. So I wanted to have you back.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Today's conversation is definitely dear to the heart. So I think it'll be
Yeah.
a good one for your listeners to tune into for sure.
Yeah. Today, we're going to talk about conscious grieving. And I feel like this is such an important process and it's an important topic because grief is such a massive experience that people go through, and everyone experiences it at some point. And it's so difficult and it's so painful and it's such a process. And some of the tips and tools that you have to share today can maybe bring some ease to that process that's so painful and difficult. And so, before we dive completely in, what do you mean by conscious grieving?
So conscious grieving is actually the process of moving through your grief in a way where you're very intentional. So it's not, I don't necessarily follow the traditional pattern or path of grief, but through our energy centers. And I do it in a very conscious way. So very intentional, very much of feeling our emotions, moving through those, but then at the same time, knowing that we have to move through grief, no matter how difficult it is, because it is. It's the dark night of the soul. It's a soul death that can really occur for many people, and me included. So I have learned how to help people shift and move through their grief in a very intentional, conscious way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think grief is so different for everyone depending on the nature of what happened when somebody passed, and then also the relationship. Like there's so many factors, but there's
Mhm.
no quick and easy way to get through grief. It's a process. But one thing is for sure is that when we avoid that process and we don't face it and we just kind of push those feelings down, it makes the process way, way harder.
Yeah, it really does. And you're right. Everyone's experience is different, and especially like the relationship that they had, right? Like losing a child is different than losing a spouse and so forth. But the foundation of grief, I think, is always the same. It's
Mm,
just that heart wrenching, tearing of your soul. Like I said, it's like, how do you rebuild from there? And how do
mm,
you re-identify yourself? And how do you speak your new truth? And those are the messages that I received as I was processing through the death of my son, which I'll get into. But that is really what came to me, was to be able to process through the chakras, to understand like how you can tell your story in a way that's empowering and not victimizing ourselves or our loved one who transitioned.
mm, mhm. Yeah. I was a hospice social worker for quite some time, and I know that I don't think anything is more painful than losing a child. Like it's out of order, it doesn't make sense, and it just completely throws us. And so, I would love for you to share how you started walking down this path and how you became interested in this topic, with sharing as much as you're comfortable sharing with us.
Okay. Um, so first, I actually was introduced to grief when I was 4. So my dad was in a motorcycle accident, and at that age, I realized that even though I was so young, but I knew that life wasn't safe. And then I could feel his energy, his spirit around me growing up, and there was just always this conversation about death in my life, and still is very much and very evident in my family, and how my family has evolved over the years. And that was he's been gone now for 46 years. And
Mm,
so it transformed all of our lives. And 12 years ago, I lost my son in an accident. And from that, that's where my dark night of the soul occurred. And I had a lot of people around me that were very, very supportive. I had a great support system. So, kind of to back up with my son, I do have to say, because he is an amazing, amazing young man. And when I had him, he was born deaf. And so, through my process of his hearing loss and him being diagnosed, I started learning sign language, and I became a sign language interpreter, and was an educational interpreter for like 22 years before I fully transitioned into my business now as an energy healer and everything. And so him and I just we were so bonded on a soul level. I can even feel it in my throat, that
mm,
he was just such a sage at a young age. And his embodiment of life, and who he attracted and connected with. Like, he just had such a huge heart. And he identified himself very young as being deaf, and I was very deaf proud, and was like, I'm deaf, and I have sign language, and I this is just who I am. And so as a family, we all embrace that. And then when he was 16, he was skateboarding and he got hit by a car. And
wow.
so it was literally, he was here 15 minutes ago and gone within
Wow.
minutes.
Mm,
And so it was very shocking to my system and my family, to everything. And so I opened my home up for his funeral, and I lived at the time like 7 hours away from where I my family was at, and my primary friends. And so I told them, like, everyone come. Like, whoever wants to come, come. You can camp in my backyard. Like, I don't care. Like, just, whoever wants to attend. And he had over 500 people attend his funeral.
whoa.
Yeah. At
Wow.
16. And his whole football team came, and
Wow.
they were all in jerseys, and it was
Mm,
so beautiful to witness that, how he was honored. And so I say that because I think that definitely kids should not go before their parents. But I believe, especially now, that he truly lived such a great life in his 16 years,
mm,
that I also believe in soul contracts. And I believe that there are moments in our life where people leave because that has the biggest impact of teaching. And so
mm,
many people learn to love greater and deeper because of him, that it changed a lot of people's lives. And it led a lot of people, I think, to love deeper in their family and connect with their kids and stuff. And so, um, right off the bat, I was conscious with it. I wanted to feel it all. Like, people would say, you can drink, you can do this, you can do that. And I didn't numb it. I never wanted to numb it. I wanted to process through it. I wanted
mm,
my kids to witness me grieving so I could stand up for them as well. Because I
mm.
had, 2 other kids, and I needed to make sure that I could be a mom to them
Wow.
and not get sick or not be depressed. And I had my moments, but it definitely didn't consume me. I lived for him, and I believe that in a lot of ways he lived through me.
Mm,
And so it just, yeah,
mhm.
it was really empowering in one way when I look back on it. In the moment, it wasn't like that. But now when I
Yeah.
look back on it, I can see that.
And most people, when they lose a child, don't handle grief that way.
No.
There's definitely there what I've seen is that they have a hard time showing up for the other family members. They go into a deep depression. Maybe they can't get out of bed. Maybe they turn to drugs and alcohol. Maybe they shut all their friends out. So I had to honor the way that you moved through this. Um, is not typical.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't. I'm not gonna say I didn't, like, I did. I cried every day for a year. I mean,
Mhm.
there were moments years after that that I would, um I slept in his bed for, like, the first month or 2. I slept with his clothes, like, there was a lot of things that I did that,
Mhm.
'cause I just was so, so broken. But I
Mhm.
was very supported by my sisters, my family, and so with that too, it was like I knew I was taken care of, so I could take care of me. And then
Mhm.
at the same time, when it was time for me to take care of mine, I could. But
Mm, mhm.
there definitely were those, moments of crying and in
Yeah.
polls over clothes that I knew he would like, or
Yeah.
at the grocery store over food. I couldn't go to the grocery store for like 4 months because, you wanna go buy your kids the things they love, and I was like, I couldn't because Austin wasn't here.
Mm.
And,
Mhm.
you do those, you walk those moments. But I think you have to walk through them with grace too, and when you give yourself permission to do that, it's lighter on the heart.
Mm, mhm. I'm actually curious how you worked through anger towards the person that was driving the car.
Oh, man. That one was hard. Um So in the very beginning, if I could have, if I could have, taken him out in my own way, I would have, but I couldn't, and I knew I couldn't. It was interesting. He worked at a clothing store, and like 8 months later or something, I went to that clothing store, and he happened to be the cashier,
Mm.
and he saw me and I saw him. And it was a time where I was barely getting out of my house. Like, I wasn't shopping, I wasn't doing nothing at that time. And I tried to chase him down. And
Mm.
I realized when I saw him run, he didn't mean to. It was an accident, um and so there was, at the time, there was a lot of blame, and I
Yeah.
was extremely angry, and at some point, forgiveness came in because I realized that I was tearing myself up, and there was
Mhm.
nothing I could do to change it. And if he was at fault, it would have been a different outcome, and I did think he was at fault. But when the police report came out, which took like 6 months, I realized it wasn't. And so I had to go through the grieving process of knowing that he wasn't to blame. And my son wasn't doing anything either. They were on a country road, him and his friend, and he was actually walking in the lane to see cars coming on because he could not hear what was behind him,
Mm.
and the car swerved. And so with that's I knew that he was doing what he needed to do to be safe, and at the same time the driver wasn't at fault.
Mm.
So there came a point where I had to say, "Okay, I could forgive that," and know that, unfortunately, death happens, but it did
Mm.
take me a long time to get there, I do have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I would be concerned if it didn't.
Yeah, no, it takes. And so just because I'm where
Mhm.
I'm at, I don't want people to think that that I didn't go through it, because I absolutely did. However, I do know there comes a point, and that's when I got to where I'm at. So it was like 7 years in,
Mhm.
and I was getting ready to take a shower. And at this point, I had already, because I think I made myself sick through it as well. There was some stuff that I was processing incorrectly, of suppressing some of the feelings. And then I got diagnosed with an autoimmune. And then it was like, okay, well, from there, I realized I
Mm.
can't take all this on. And so I started doing Reiki, and that's kind of how that all came about in my life. But at 7 years, I was getting ready to take a shower, and I had this huge download. And in that download, I was shown how we move through grief through our energy centers. And it literally is like, although each one of them are fluid, and each one of them, the system, or not so much the system, but the process of it,
Mhm.
can be in different stages. However, the way I was shown it is that when you lose a loved one, it's like straight to the heart. So the whole entire nervous system shuts down.
Mhm.
You go through where you have to do the internal work. Like you go within, you're just in shut down. Our nervous system can't handle it. And so the broken heart happens. And then from there, you go to the root system, and it's
Mhm.
like your new foundation. Who are you now? And if you've lost a spouse, like how can you financially, support yourself if they were the primary? So there's all these thoughts and things that start coming through with the root of security. And can you go back to work? A lot of times, like, unfortunately, our system only allows us like 5 days of grief.
Mhm. If
I was
that.
fortunate that I was able to take a lot longer
Mhm.
to go through my grieving process, so I was able to take, like, 6 months off
Mm.
and return to work, but, if not, how would I have supported my kids? So it's like you go to root, and then how do you continue to work? How are you functional in society? How are you functional within your family? And then to sacral, which is all about our family connection, our identity. So as a mom, how do I re-identify myself as a mother when I've
Mm.
lost one? Do I blame myself?
Mm.
Am I to blame? Do I blame the person, that hit him? Like, there's all that processing of it, all the emotions of
Mhm.
it.
Mhm. Or if
And
you're a widow, then you have this new identity instead of being a wife. Now you've got this label as a widow.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So each one offers a different level of identification, or how do you feel about it, even if you don't identify yourself with it, but it's more the emotions that come with it. And how do you speak about it? So then it goes to your throat chakra, and
Mm.
there is what's your new story? And how do you speak your story? And how do you speak the story of how your loved one transitioned? Because a lot of times what happens is we're asked about how they died. And then once you do, the voice lowers, the energy shifts. And there's almost like this thing where we kind of, and I don't want to use the word victim, but we do, where we kind of victimize the one who
Mhm.
died, and then we victimize ourselves. Well, he died
Mhm.
this way and then this. And I think what happens with that, it keeps our throat very restricted. And so there's the processing of that, of being able to share your story, of being able to say, yeah, this is what happened to me. And it doesn't have to um, change who I am to the degree of where life has no meaning left.
Mhm.
Right. And then it goes to third eye, and you start to understand the soul's perspective and the cycle of life and death. And then you get to the crown chakra, and the crown chakra is the big soul perspective of what is death and what is life. Why are we here? So that whole perspective comes through. And then in the end, you show up in your solar plexus of empowerment and being able to honor their life journey and honor your own journey, and be able to take them through your life with you, as well as doing things like this, like being able to speak out on grief and being able to facilitate grief groups, or you know um, do nonprofits, do charitable things, have awareness that happens.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of parents, even spouses, people that they go out there and they become in service
Yeah.
because they went through that experience. And I
Mhm.
think that's a big part of the soul contracts. How
Mhm.
do we become in service and have offerings based off our own trauma and suffering?
Mhm. I'm curious about the process of it switching to because I'm super into this victim archetype right now. And so there is a victimness in this, right? It's
Yeah.
like your whole world collapsed and something happened to you. And so there is a big victimness in there. And I'm wondering where the shift takes place to I am the victim and this happened to me and this is my identity. Like I am a mom that lost a child or I am a widow to where it shifts to like this is something that happened in my life and it's a part of my story versus the entire story. And it's the same with trauma. If somebody has sexual abuse trauma, right, it's like
Mhm.
I am a sexual abuse victim, and then that becomes like their title and their headline, and that's how they identify themselves. Or it could be that there's 20 other titles and that's one of the things that happened that's part of the story. And so how do we, and that's that's a huge question. But how do we transition from one to the other?
I believe that's when we get into that conscious awareness. That's where I feel where we go from the throat chakra to the third eye, because when you can change your story to where this did happen to me, but this doesn't have to identify who I am. This
Mhm.
doesn't have to stop me from living. Because I do believe if you're a survivor to any loss, you have purpose. You still have purpose here. So, what is our purpose? And if it is to grieve the rest of your life, in a way that it takes you out of life and you're not functional through addiction, and there's no blame, right? At some
Mhm.
point there just comes self-awareness and choices. So again, it's our choices that we make. And I think I personally came to a place where like I said, I had children. I was a single mom too at the time. So I didn't have really anyone that was going to take on me and my kids. I had to go and do it for them so that they could have a life, and I didn't want their brother's life to change them to the point where they couldn't have a life either. And instead, they honor their brother in such a way to even to this day. Like my oldest son, he's 33, he takes off every year in August. So the interesting thing is my son's name was Austin. His birthday is August 19th. His death
Mhm.
date was the 6th and 7th. So the accident was on the 6th and then he transitioned on the 7th. So August is a very heavy month of the year for us.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. 12 years out, August comes, your body remembers, it's imprinted. You're going to go through, we go through that cycle of grief every year. And some years lighter, but we go through it. But he takes it off every year and goes camping or does something in honor of his brother. And
Mm.
then, for many years, we released balloons, we did candles, I had altars, there's these things that we did that to remember him and to keep him very present in our life. So there's never a moment where he's not here,
Mm.
and now because of what I do with energy work, I feel him. He's always around. He's here now,
Mm.
so it's
Mm.
like he guides, I think, a lot of things in my life. And I believe that in spirit, they're just on the other side of the veil supporting us. But we have to
Mm.
lift ourselves up to be able to feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. How do we move to purpose? So I know it's really common actually when people lose children that they find like a purpose through the pain.
Hmm.
But I think it's less easy for someone that's in their 80s that loses their partner to figure out their purpose. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are around that.
I feel like someone that is at that age, I think their purpose becomes their memories. They get to honor their life journey with their partner. They may not find purpose in like going out and doing, active things like podcasts and things like that, but what they do is they honor their loved one and their heart and their memories. And I think that's how like more our elders respect and honor their loved ones.
Mhm. Mhm.
My Grammy, my papa died when I was 19. My Grammy's been single her whole life. She's 89 years old, and she
Mhm.
never remarried. She never even dated, and it's been 30 something years,
Wow.
And so, she honors him in her way always, and it was her choice. She never wanted to marry again. That was her husband, and that's how she wanted to be. And on her special days of anniversary, birthdays and stuff, we make sure that we call and talk about him and everything, and that's good for her. So I
Mm.
think
Mhm.
it is different. In our age, he shows us too how to also grieve, because I think
Mhm.
in each age group it's different.
Mhm. I had a neighbor not long ago that lost a daughter that it was about 10 years ago, I'd say.
Mm,
Um, and she still has all of her clothes and all of her belongings in her home. They just moved and she took all of it with her. Um, has some nice new cars, but always drives her daughter's old car so she can be close to her daughter. Has a photo of her daughter in her home that is very prominent, and I think every week she goes to her grave and puts flowers on her grave. And anytime she talks about her daughter, she breaks out in tears. And so this is 10 years that has passed. And so for someone that kind of has having trouble moving on, so I imagine this is more common than not.
Yeah.
What advice would you have?
So I think one of my biggest moments was I was in a grief group and called Jessica's House up in Northern California, and I loved it. And they had a cute house that they converted into this just a grieving house. And so the parents would meet in the living room, and then the bedrooms are converted into for age groups. So the kids would go and play with other kids, the siblings, right? Would all
Mhm,
gather together. And there was a family there, a couple there, and I think their son had passed at that time like 10 years.
mhm,
And when they would share, they grieved on him like he had just passed yesterday.
mhm,
And I remember sitting there thinking, I really don't want that to be my story. I
mhm,
don't want to be 10 years out. And so that for me was a big, like, the seed was planted, right? Like we have those seeds that are planted in life and
mhm,
stuff. And I think that what I also realized in that moment and through the process of it is that when we hold on so tightly, we're holding on to their spirit as well.
mhm,
And I think that when we can release them in spirit, it allows them to go do what they need to do.
mm,
I don't
mhm.
think that they get trapped here with us, but I think that it definitely keeps an energetic cord to
Yeah.
where they're not able to fully leave and go do what they need to do if we're holding on to that so much.
Mhm,
Um, that might not be the best advice for people that are still grieving their children to think we got to set them free. Um, I do trust and believe in the honoring of. I have my son's things.
mhm.
Actually
Like
I pack them all up and put them in a big chest, and I have things around my home, but it's not like a shrine. Like you have to kind of look and know where they are,
mhm.
but they're there. They're around.
But you can do both. You can
You can
honor
absolutely
and
do that.
release at the same time. One
Yes.
doesn't I guess actually that's uh, something you hear from people where they feel like if they were to release, then it's not honoring that person, which is a fallacy in belief. So that I need to hold on to them super, super tightly. Otherwise, my memories are going to slip away or they're going to slip away from me. But they're not, they don't live there. They live in our heart and in our soul and in so many other places. And so, I guess I would be understanding that perspective too, that you can have both. You can release and love and honor and cherish and keep close and hold those memories, but not grasp.
Yes, not grasp. And I think that's the same thing with our living children. You know, if we
Yes.
were to keep them and keep them at home, for the rest of
Mhm.
their life, I see that the same. And I actually made a promise to my other kids that, as long as they didn't go as far as their brother, they could go anywhere in the world. And I've honored that. So now I have one in Arizona and one in Northern
Mhm.
California. And but I honor their journey and their walk because I know that
Mhm.
I want them to experience this life. And I don't want them to just be in pain and suffering.
Mhm.
And it's so easy to get trapped there. Suffering
Mhm.
is so difficult to pull yourself out of, but
Mhm.
you have to do it in a way that is very intentional. Every
Mhm.
day, every day you got to get up and be the warrior. Every day you got to get up and fight the fight to show up in love and honoring your loved one or your child, but not to a point where you are holding them, you're grasping, like
Mhm.
you said,
And holding ourselves back.
and holding ourselves back.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's this really cool I might have this incorrect, but I think it's in Ireland and it's a tradition called keening. Have you heard about it?
Mm-mm.
And they get together in like a parade. I might be screwing this up a little bit. But then they like actively make these crying, like these really intense crying, grieving sounds. And it's called keening, and they all do it together. And it's almost like a group grieving that's very outward.
Like a
It's really,
wailing.
yeah, if people look it up on YouTube, it's amazing and it's really powerful. But I think that that's such an interesting concept where you get together and you actually actively allow this process of getting things out of our body that don't serve us. Because my grandmother had been taught never to cry. She'd been shamed about that when she was little. And even when my grandfather died and really horrible things happened, she'd say, I want to cry so badly, but I can't. And I think about like how much when we don't allow ourselves to cry, we don't allow ourselves to get angry, we don't allow ourselves to grieve and get these emotions out, they just get really trapped in our body. And then it can create, like for you, right, an autoimmune disorder or something like that. It turns on us. We can't
Yes, it
keep all
does.
that in our body and not have it turn on us.
Yeah. No, and I think generationally, like, what you said about your grandmother, mine was the same. And actually, we just went for the memorial this year on Memorial Day because my grandfather was in the Air Force. And she said that was the first time she'd been to his gravesite since
Mm,
like he first was buried. Like I said,
wow.
like 30 something years ago, but it's because her generation was taught, "You don't cry. Women are hard, strong,"
Mm-hmm.
and now it's like, no, we're embracing our emotions. We embrace what we feel. We have to show up for them, and I think that's what conscious grieving is. Allow yourself to truly feel into all of your emotions, and we're not suppressing them, and,
Mm-hmm.
because it does become illness, it can become disease, suddenly you're on all kinds of antidepressant medication and the like the luster of life it dims. And so I think it's important for us to be aware of where we want to be, because you can lose yourself in grief for so many years and then wake up one day and go, wow, where have I been? What's been
Mm-hmm.
happening, And I don't think that's what we're supposed to experience, and I don't think that's what our loved ones want. I think we're like one of the only like cultures that experience death the way we do. Most cultures have a different honoring when
Mm-hmm.
when their loved ones transition, and here we're just so quick with it. We're like I said, you get 5 days of grief, 10 if you
Mm-hmm.
have to travel, and if not, you have to apply for all these things and time off, and you might not get paid, and then people come and then they leave and they get back to their life, and then the griever is left there and doesn't quite know what to do. And so I really think that we need to change that. We need to
Mm-hmm.
change how the gathering happens and what are we releasing, and let the griever really feel into what they're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and as the griever to give yourself permission to do that.
Yeah, and knowing that it comes in waves, so there might be like a really intense wave and then you don't feel it and then it comes back and it does meander a little bit downwards over time, but it can come out of the blue. Like you might have a couple of months where you don't feel anything and then like you said an anniversary comes up or a beautiful memory on your photo deck or whatever, and then it kind of comes in waves. And so it's having grace with ourselves and allowing that process to have fluidity that doesn't need a definitive end date and it doesn't need to look a certain way, and that other person's grief doesn't need to look like your own grief.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I remember the first time I was able to laugh at a video of him.
Mm-hmm. Then you felt
And
bad.
it was years out, like, probably
Mm,
8, 10 years out, and, the video came up, and I just laughed, and I was able to actually be in the moment with
mm,
him on that video, and that was the first time. And then when I, like, stopped, I looked at my husband, I go, "Do you know that's the first time I've been able to actually laugh with him since he's
mm,
been gone?" Because it would always bring up instant tears and ugly tears, big, like, where your face is just painted with tear like, grief tears are different tears. They're not like any other tear. And if you study tears, they actually have a different like compost and a different like structure and everything.
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. So it's like you're gonna have the tears that are like, they like pop out. They're big. They're like alligator tears. There's the like sticky tear. It's so crazy because I believe that's the emotion that's coming up. It's what's in it, the chemicals that are in it.
Mm,
And so it is so important to cry. We need to cry. That's what's detoxifying our body. That's what's releasing that angst, that the closing of our heart. And so when I was able to laugh, it was such a moment of like freeing myself And I'm talking
Mhm.
like, yeah, it was like 10 years. So even though it's been like, there is always going to be a process of grief. You never know how it's going to show up.
Mhm.
But I always think it's like an invitation to sit with them
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
remember. Yeah.
I think there's also, on the flip side, there's also some people that hold this ideology that suffering is required in order to honor the person too, which is something I've actually experienced in the last couple of years, where it's like, oh, I made a mistake and then I need to punish myself and I need to suffer to make it right or something. And it's the
Mhm.
same with grief or pain. I'm needing to suffer in order to honor that person. And so maybe if somebody had that moment where they're laughing, and it's early on, maybe it's within a year, and then they're laughing and they're like, oh my gosh, is it okay to experience joy? Is it okay to experience these feelings? Am I honoring that person if I'm laughing? And so I'd love for you to speak to that.
I absolutely think it's okay to laugh early on. I do. I think that, we judge people. Are they sad? Are they crying?
Mhm.
Is she sad enough? And people put masks on. We have to show up some way. So I think
Mhm.
if someone chooses to cry in silence or cry privately, we should honor that too. And if
Mhm.
they choose to laugh and be happy in a moment, we should honor that too. I think we're taught to that we should be suffering and we should be punishing ourselves on many levels.
Mhm.
Um, Honestly, I think it comes from religion, that if you're not, punishing yourself, you're not living an earthly life. And I just don't believe in that. I don't think that we came through, I always say, like through portals, timelines, and dimensions to fully be in suffering. But I do believe in the human experience, that we're here to experience all the levels of emotion and the degrees of that. But I don't think it means we always have to get stuck in our suffering. And I
Mhm.
like I said earlier, I don't think that's what our loved ones want, is for us
Yeah.
just to always be in that space. In my group right now, I started with them almost a year ago. So I brought to the table conscious grieving, and they at first were like, "What?" All these things that we're kind of talking about, and I brought forward the spiritual teachings on it, and the medicine wheel of indigenous ways of looking at it, or instead of it being a linear way, it's a cycle, right? And
Mhm.
at some point, though, we like going back to choice, we have a choice. Do we continue to walk the path of suffering, or do we choose the path of love and light and honoring?
Mhm.
And that is a choice we make. And I think that choice shows up. We stand at that fork in the road many times through our journey. And at some point, I think most people get to the place where they can choose to live again, but I think there's the lessons that have to be learned to get to that place, where you can say, all right, I'm ready to be free from this. This was
Mhm.
hard, and, you know, but
When you can't skip to that, you have to do all the hard work first. You have to do the
yes,
dark night of the soul. You have to do the ugly alligator tears. You have to do feel all the pain and feel all the suffering and feel all of it and feel the
all of it.
aloneness and the unfairness of it. You have to go through all of that to get to the other side.
Yeah. Many days of just laying in bed, balled up,
Mhm.
and that's okay. And I
Yeah.
truly, I always tell them, like, if you got those days, do it. Honor yourself in that day. Make
Mhm.
that your PJ day. If that's your day to just curl in bed and that's that, do it. And then
Mhm.
the next day, get up and look at life again.
Yeah.
Give yourself the permission to break down, to cry, to feel it all. And then you pick it up again the next day. And if the next day you can only do half a day, then just do half
Mhm.
a day.
Mhm.
But the more we give ourselves permission to do the ugly work, that deep work, the
Mhm.
more we're also giving ourselves the permission to live.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, when you went through that immediate moment of grief, and I'm talking about like maybe that moment and then the 6 months following,
Mm.
What were the things that were most helpful that other people did and the least helpful and detrimental? Because I think what happens, and this is super common, is that people aren't comfortable with grief. I happen to be one of those people that's very comfortable with it. And so when recently my friend's mom was dying, I'm more than happy to go there and support her and be around that and be there when all the transitions are happening. That's something I'm really comfortable with. But what people find and what's really common is that when they're going through grief, people don't know how to handle it. They say all the wrong things and they kind of like bail out of their life
Yes.
in a time where people are needing them the most. And it can fracture relationships and it can be really hurtful. And so, if somebody's super uncomfortable with grief and they don't know how to handle it, how can they support somebody in an appropriate way that's going through this process? And what are some of the things that they probably shouldn't do or say that's not helpful? Because I know you've probably experienced all of it, you
Yes.
know?
I'd say some of the things that weren't helpful were um people that would bring their beliefs to me at the moment,
Mhm,
and it's like I'm open to whatever you believe. But in the moment, I was just trying to process my son. You know what
mhm,
I feel is when they go, "I couldn't even imagine." And I'm like,
mhm,
"Don't." And there I would
mhm,
hear that so much, I would get to the point, "Then don't, because it's
mhm,
worse than you can ever imagine, so
mhm,
don't even go there."
mhm,
I think bringing food so that the collective family can eat
mhm,
and nobody has to worry about that. I think that's always a good thing. Just sitting with people, just holding
mhm,
space for them.
mhm,
The ones that could come and just hold space for me, that was the best. They didn't need
mhm.
to talk. To be honest, you're not even hearing. You
Yeah.
know, I wasn't even hearing anything anyone was saying anyway. I was in my own thoughts. As
Mhm,
I remember I had somebody I was sitting in my living room, and one of his shoes was under a table, and I crawled over to it and I grabbed a shoe and I was sitting with his shoe and I was just so lost in my thoughts. And I had someone there and she was talking over me, like standing up, talking to me about, like, I couldn't even imagine, and she was going on and on about her son. And I remember I just looked up and thought, "The hell are you talking about?" And I just walked away. Like, I had nothing for her. Like, I
mhm,
cannot even try to hold space for you right now or hear
mhm,
your fears of losing someone.
mhm,
So, yeah, those are the things definitely. Like,
mhm,
grievers don't want to hear your fear of losing and having
mhm,
grief. We just need to hold space for each other and let them know that we're here. And if they need
mhm,
anything, that we're there. And
mhm.
yeah, bring food.
Yeah.
Well, that was really, really helpful because then no one in my family needed to worry about it. They just had food, and people don't really want to eat anyway.
Mhm,
And I remember I wasn't eating, and there was somebody brought, like, some croissant sandwiches or something, and I was days in, and I ate that, and then my sister went, she packed them up and, like, put them away for me because she was like, "This is something she's actually eating." And so it's those little things when
mhm,
you notice, even in the depth of your grief, that people are really taking care of you.
mhm.
That's, like,
Yeah.
true healing. That really
Mhm,
is, and
mhm,
I just adore that. My family came from all over to be there, and it was because they needed to. They needed to. It was a shock to my whole family. So it was like we needed to gather in that
mhm.
in that energy
Yeah.
together. Um, but I think that showing up to tell people your belief, even though I know that people are really trying to help, if you
Mhm,
don't share that belief with them, don't do it. That just feels like you're pushing something onto somebody that
mhm.
they're probably not ready for. Just because it's your truth doesn't mean it's everyone's truth, kinda thing. And
Yeah.
that goes for this too. Like, some people might listen to this and go, "Oh my gosh, there's no way I could grieve that way." And that's okay. Grieve
Mhm,
your way, but just know there are different ways of grieving that can help you. And then there's others that can really harm you.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. So what you're saying is one of the most helpful things is like people don't need to say the right thing. They don't need to do the right thing. They just need to show up, be present, maybe do some helpful things. Maybe it's like if people have little kids, it's like taking the little kids and
Yeah.
taking care of them or babysitting or doing some laundry or doing some cooking and not asking, just doing
Just
it.
doing.
And then
Yeah.
just being there, just being present. You don't have to say the right word. You don't have to have words. Just show up instead of disappear.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. yeah, come wash some dishes, come,
Mhm.
clean house, whatever, help with the kids.
Mhm.
One of the helpful things was somebody went and made pictures. They, went and had them developed so we can make the posters and stuff, and just things like that. That was really helpful
Mhm.
because I'm
Yeah.
not going out. I'm not going out anywhere.
Yeah.
Like
You
at the
can't.
time, I was like, no. And it's interesting because when he first left, he there were signs from him immediately. Immediately. And that's a thing too. I feel that if you're open to it, you'll start seeing how they're showing up, how they're communicating with you. And
Mhm.
one of the things was my aunt, she wanted us to go get her toes done. She was like, "You need to get your toes done for the funeral." And I was like, "I do not want that." But
I
she
do not care about my feet.
I do not care what my feet look like. Um, but she had spoke to the salon and they actually closed it down for us. It was after hours
Aw.
and they did
Mm.
that. And afterwards my sister was like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And it was getting late. And at that point I was like, I wanted a tattoo, a memorial tattoo for him.
Mm.
And so on my shoulder I have one that's his name sign was AJ. And so we went and we called the place. They said they would stay open and they were open. And so we pulled out of the parking lot. And as we were pulling out, a car was coming our way. Well, they did a U-turn in front of us, and then we pulled behind them. And when I looked at the license plate, it said AJ's mom.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
was like, "Oh my gosh." And those are the signs that you look for, right?
Mhm.
Like, and you don't have to look for them. They just show up. And he had
Mhm.
so many like that where
Mhm.
everyone was having something. I mean, people left the funeral and they went home and they're like, "I got home and I have closed caption on my TV." Hearing people don't even know how to turn on closed
Yeah.
caption, especially 12 years ago, and let alone have it when they got home. So I do believe in spirit's ability to communicate
Mhm.
with us. And
Yeah.
one of the things that was really, really helpful for me is I had a reading done. Went to a medium,
Mhm.
and within a couple weeks of his death. And so that, if I can say anything outside of family support helped, that was it. So
Mhm.
when I went to this medium, it was interesting. I joined a Facebook group for parents who lost their children. And then in there was a book about losing your children or something. And I clicked on that and that took me to the medium who actually was the author of the book. And so I contacted him and it was literally just sign your name, your number, and pick a date. That was it. And so I had it, and my grandmother, my grandfather, my dad, and my son
Wow.
all came through with messages. He was able to like detail them out. And my son came forward at the end and he knew so much about his funeral. Mind you, 12 years
Whoa.
ago,
That's
my
crazy.
grandparents and my father had been gone for way longer than social media. My
Mhm.
son, unless you went to his funeral, you wouldn't even know details of it. Like
Mhm.
he knew his skateboard was incorporated in his funeral, so within
Mhm.
his bouquet of flowers, his skateboard was in that.
Mhm.
He had a hat. So there was very intimate details that
Wow.
he knew.
Mhm.
And, so he was very visual on what was going on, and so, and the same with my dad and stuff, but one of the things that really struck me was, he said, "He keeps showing me his hand," and I didn't tell him my son was deaf, and he said, "He keeps showing me his hand," and I was like,
Mhm.
"Well, what's his hand saying? What's he doing?" And he goes, "Well, he's got his pinky and his finger out and his thumb, and he was signing, 'I love you.'"
Oh my
And I was
god.
like, "Oh my god," I just started bawling. I'm like, "He's saying, 'I love
Ah.
you,'" and then I told him, I said, "My
Oh.
son was born deaf, and he's
Oh my
signing," and he
gosh.
goes,
Oh, I just
"Well,
got
what does it
chills in my whole
mean?"
body.
I know. Wait till I tell you this part. He goes, "Well, what does it mean if he swishes his pinky through the air?" And his name was AJ.
Oh my
So his
gosh.
name sign was AJ. So he was swishing his pinky through the air and he was saying his name.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there was just in that moment, it was so valid and so true.
Mm.
I knew my son was with me. And
Mm.
at the very end, he asked me, and this is where soul contracts first came into my full, like my awareness
Mm.
is, he said, "Do you have any questions?" And he told me, he goes, "Your son's very powerful for him only to be gone for a few weeks, for him to come forward this way."
Mm.
And there was so many other messages, and I could totally do a whole conversation with you on that kind of stuff. But Um, I said, "Yeah, why did you leave me?" And he
Mm,
said, "In a past life, I had left him." And he wasn't actually coming into this life with me. He, um, he had already kinda completed his journey here, and but he came for my soul growth, and,
mm,
so he wasn't meant to stay long. And he told me that I would, bring great awareness in my life. And at the time, I thought he meant for the deaf community because that's what I was doing, as a full-blown interpreter, and that's what I did. And so I was really good with what I'm a great interpreter, and I have a lot of pride and I honor that. And but he was talking about what I do now
mhm,
as a Reiki master and bringing forward this awareness and who I work with and the groups that I facilitate and the ceremonies that I do and the healing that I do now. And but I had no idea that's what he was talking about. But at the time I was just like, wow. So then I started realizing as the more I learned about soul contracts and that duality and the polarity of life and everything, and um, it was just quite amazing. There was a lot of messages that on my conscious level at that time didn't truly understand, but I knew it to be truth, if that makes sense. And then it started unfolding for me. And when I actually heard soul contracts for the first time, it
mhm,
was after I moved from Northern California to Southern California. So I was never coming back to my hometown. I woke up one
mhm,
morning and heard it. And I was like, no. And then I called my mom, "I think I'm coming home." And I did. And in my first house here was the first time I watched it. And I was like, everything in me opened up and I was like, that's it. Like we have
mm,
soul contracts and it's our contracts determine certain things in our life. And so since then, as a seeker of spiritual truth, all that has been revealed in more ways than one
mm, mhm.
and confirmed over and over and over again.
And I think of soul contracts as people that come into our life that to teach us lessons that we need to learn.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and he was
Mhm,
my greatest teacher, still is
mm,
today.
mhm,
Yeah.
mm,
And people
yeah.
who see spirit, know spirit, they're always like, "Oh, you have a young man around you, and, he keeps showing me his muscles," and he's always and if they know sign language, he will sign to them in there when they see
Oh,
him.
wow. That's
Mhm.
amazing.
Even though
Mm.
it's all telepathic and all that, like, there's no real communication, but he will sign to those, and then they'll say, "Well, I know sign language," and I'm like, "Wow." It goes so deep, but we have to be
Mm,
open to that, and I think when we're open to it, they can show up for us in such profound, beautiful ways, and
mhm,
that's why the healing can keep happening.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is such a beautiful story. I'm so grateful for your sharing and your
Mhm.
openness. Like as you're telling it, it's like this tragedy that's turned into this beautiful, like I think of a butterfly. It's just I love the story and it's so evident the relationship that you still have with him and I love it. Thank you for sharing.
Aw, well, thank you for having me and giving me
Yeah.
the opportunity to share it. I think
Yeah.
it's important. I think that we need to hear stories like this because there
Mhm.
is another side to grief that doesn't keep us in that suffering. And I
Mhm.
think when people are ready for it, these are the stories that will come to them. That alignment will show up. So I think that
Mhm.
this is going to fall on the right ears. The right people are going to hear it. They're going to see it. They're going to feel it. And
Mhm.
I encourage it. Like, look up soul contracts, like, learn how to consciously grieve. I will be hosting an online grief group. I'm hoping starting next month.
Mhm.
But this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. And I have a lot of people that are like, do you do it on Zoom? Do you do it? And I'm like, no, it's just in person right now. So it is coming. But whether it's with me or someone else, figure out within yourself,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
what really connects so that we can continue to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love for you to share all the other offerings that you have and how people can connect with you and find you, and I will put all that in the show notes as well.
So I am a shamanic Reiki master. I do distance healing. I do in-person healing. I have a lot of different um, healing techniques that I do. I'm a tarot reader as well, so I'm very much into connecting with spirit through cards. Um, I am on Moon Rising Shamanic Institute on Facebook, and with Moon Rising Shamanic Mystics on Facebook, and then Moon Rising Shamanic Institute is the other one. You can also find me on Instagram at Reiki 7 Point Healing, which is my personal business. And yeah, so I do everything distant as in person, and archetypes and all the things. So I kind of just let spirit like do what it needs to do through me, and
Mm.
very open
Mhm.
to a lot of different avenues of spiritual work and healing.
Yeah, so people should follow you on Facebook because you're going to be launching a new website and you have a ton of different offerings and a lot of different skills. And so if they find you, they'll have a plethora of things to choose from.
Yeah, so my website should be out at the end of the month, which I'm really excited about. Um, which Isabel Wells, she's the one that created it, and it's beautiful. And so I highly recommend that if anyone's looking for a website. But so that will be out, and that will have all of my offerings and how to connect with me. And yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Well,
Mhm.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you again. If people haven't checked out our last podcast, they need to do that. And I'm sure sometime in the future we'll connect again. I would love to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I enjoy having conversations with you. It's
Yeah.
very, very laid back,
Yeah.
easygoing. Yeah.
Good. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nikkiyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.